Welcome, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Planning Commission meeting for today. My name is Joseph Murphy, filling in for Mr. JR. He's out of town. All right, so we have the first order of business, the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes that we need to make to the agenda?
Just worthy of noting is the postponement of case 3008 for the request of the applicant. So that item is postponed and will not be heard until at least the November meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Ben.
Nothing else has changed.
And that is in addition to case number 2905, which is also postponed.
That's correct.
From last November. Okay, if there's no further changes, entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Next up, are there any changes that need to be made to the minutes from the September 11th Planning Commission meeting? If there are no changes, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Just so you know, Commissioner Logan just joined us. So she's joining us remotely.
Thank you, Mrs. Logan. Can you hear us?
She's muted.
I see that, okay. We've also got Mr. Paul Watkins, Mr. John Granberry, Mr. Christopher Simmons, Mr. Robert Baxter, and some other person that I guess that's us. Okay, moving on. Is there any staff reports, Mr. Ben?
There is not.
No building official report either? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right, well, that brings us to our public hearings. The first public hearing we have is for case number 3001, Blackburn Communities. And I'm trying to see who has that. Mr. Ben.
All right, thank you. So this is a request for a zoning map amendment for the Oxford Commons Planned Unit Development. The applicant is proposing to make some modifications to the planned unit development, and I'll go through each of those. So they actually provided a list in the narrative, and so what you'll see are four modifications with some sub modifications as well. So there's a proposed modification to the roadway within Tract G. Robert, would you mind sharing the screen with the I think that would be helpful to pull that up, and if you can go to the 2023 exhibit. All right, so what is being proposed is modification to the vehicle circulation plan that's in place for the PUD, and in particular, it would be the roadway within Tract G has been removed, the section that is between that cul-de-sac that you see there on the upper portion of the PUD, which originally connected over to FD Buddy East. So that is now removed. Tract N now indicates a future connection. So in the lower right-hand corner of the PUD on the far east side, you'll see a new road that actually connects to Campground Road, and that extends beyond the limits of the PUD. Additionally, there's a modification to the plan data table, which reduces the density of Tract G to a total of 44 proposed units. There is a modification to the expanded PUD plan data table, and then there are some minor clarifications and updates to the clarification and summary of conditions list that was previously provided. And as noted in here, please take note of condition 23 there related to the development of Tract N. So the application notes that a majority of the controlling entity of the Oxford Commons PUD, Blackburn Communities LLC, has purchased property that's contiguous with the PUD tracked in to Campground Road, and the applicant states that the connectivity with this road that's being provided will provide an additional access to future residential development within tracked in. They also state that the growth of Campground Road has created the need for more connectivity to Oxford, and that this connection provides a convenient option for the general public in the area to access Oxford Commons, associated schools, restaurants, entertainment, hotels, professional offices in that area. Existing in a new residential development does exist on Campground Road, and wrecks occur occasionally at the intersection of Campground Road and Highway 6. Nearly all of the homes located along this road are located in the Oxford City School District boundary, and this connection could result in additional and safe transportation options for those residents to take advantage of, and staff is supportive of this element of the request. This request also brings back the modification to the circulation plan that previously, as actually a year ago, the October meeting, that previously proposed eliminating the connection to Lakewood Hills Drive and FD Buddy East, and also to reduce the development potential from 67 units along Track G to 44 units. This modification was presented a year ago. Ultimately, it was denied by the Mayor and Board of Aldermen. The Mayor and Board did approve an amendment to the Preserve Phase 5 subdivision that changed a portion of Lakewood Hills Drive to become a private road from that cul-de-sac over to what would have been the connection to FD Buddy East. While this road is allowed to be private based on that approval, it does not mean that the road shall always be private, and by leaving the vehicular circulation plan unchanged, it allows for that portion of Lakewood Hills Drive to potentially become a public road in the future. The Planning Commission and Mayor and Board may believe it's best to have the PUD reflect the actuality of the situation by changing the vehicular circulation plan to eliminate that connectivity. Staff is supportive of the request that reduces the quantity of residential units in that area to 44. Finally, there are some proposed modifications to the clarification and summary of conditions exhibit. Notably, condition 6 is modified to reflect the density reduction of track G. Condition 23 is it's a new addition stating that tract N cannot exceed 79 platted lots until a second connection is made or the connection to Campground Road is approved for construction as indicated in the June, it actually should be the July 23 PUD plan that you see there. So there are a few other technical corrections, grammatical changes to the document that are not substantive. I did include the requirements for rezoning by state law and the case history associated with those. And ultimately, with rezonings, the test is always whether or not it was a mistake, and this is not a mistake or a Scribner's error. But you do have to prove change in need. And the acquisition of additional property to provide this connection to Campground Road does establish a change, especially for the vehicular circulation plan for Oxford Commons PUD. This road will increase connectivity options for the community, and while many residents of Lafayette County may utilize it, many of those residents also have limited connectivity options, and a lot of those residents do access the Oxford school system. So staff is supportive of the, staff does believe that there's sufficient change in need with the acquisition of new property that will provide this connection and at least justify the modifications to the Oxford Commons PUD. Staff recommends approval of the requested modifications with the exception of the modification to the plan that removes the connection to Lakewood Hill Drive in Track G, although the Planning Commission and the Mayor and Board may determine that it's best to have the PUD reflect the actuality of the situation since it's now privately owned and maintained. I know that Paul Kashanina is here on behalf of the applicant, and there may be some residents in the audience that wish to comment on this.
Thank you, Mr. Ben.
You bet.
Before we take comments from the audience or questions, commissioners, is there any questions right now for Mr. Ben or for the applicant? Those with us online, Commissioner Logan, do you have any questions or comments?
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just Just as a reminder, the Planning Commission is a recommending body, and ultimately there will be future discussion at the Mayor and Board of Aldermen who will make the determination whether to grant or to deny this modification.
Okay, thank you. And I guess just for us, for the commission sitting here, what we have, I don't know if you guys have read the recommendation, but very closely, but it did catch me a bit off guard, but what the current staff recommendation is approval of these modifications because we do have a change in the acquisition of the new property. However, there will be an exception to the modification of the vehicular circulation plan, and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially what the city is recommending, or the planning department is recommending, is that road do be made public. Essentially not public because it's private, but we'll leave it in place in the PUD so that if we ever did want to make it public, we could do so. Is that right?
Yeah, what we've suggested as part of our recommendation is that the circulation plan just remain unchanged for that portion, where you can see at the top of the screen where that road continues all the way over to Buddy East. That gives, I believe, maximum flexibility. So at some point in the future, if that it's determined that the Lakewood Hill Drive be extended and it be a public road, then it doesn't necessitate a new PUD modification or going through a rezoning request in the future.
Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure we had that clear. Questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Paul Coscianino with Precision Engineering. I'm here representing the applicant, Blackburn Communities. And I don't want to reiterate too much of what Ben has already stated about the application. It's, I think, somewhat straightforward, but the applicant, Blackburn Communities, they have secured the property to the east. That property is owned by the applicant, so it's really not a question mark as to whether that's available for this future connectivity and that change that creates. And then the other component of this, which is the designation of that second roadway within Track G as private, really is a reflection of the reality as we sit here today. That plat has been approved, that roadway is private. Our applicant intends to keep that as a private roadway. And we think really for the sake of future homeowners in Tract N, which is the area to the east of the high school on the right-hand side of the sheet here, no homes have been sold in that area. Excuse me. And we think it's appropriate that any persons that do buy a home in Tract N are clear that roadway is not public, is not intended to be public, and we think it's most appropriate for the PUD to represent what the reality is as we sit here today. Because up until that plat was approved, I guess there was the option that could have been a public roadway, but as we sit here today, that has been approved as a private roadway, and that's where we stand today. And we'd like the application to stand as it is without modifying the approval.
Paul, real quick, is there, it's not paved as we sit here today, correct?
I'm sorry?
It's not paved between, best way to say it, but where the lake, basically where the easement for the utility line, is there any pavement across there connected right now?
There is. It's paved up to a cul-de-sac, but it does not connect and is not intended to connect into Tract N. But it is paved. I mean, it's a fully built driveway.
Okay. And so whenever y'all are done, is it going to be a gate right there?
No.
Where it stops? Or?
No, but there's no physical connection between the cul-de-sac on the east end of the driveway, the private driveway. There's no connection from that cul-de-sac into Tract N. It's a completed driveway.
Okay.
In the, can I say?
Yeah.
In the previous 6, 7, 8 years though, the intention all along was to connect, correct?
That has been shown as a connection in the overall PUD since early on in the days of the original PUD approval. But again, it was conceptual in nature, and that has changed. And the applicant does not desire to have that to be a public roadway, and it has since been approved as a private drive.
But the concept was approved with it connecting.
Initially, the PUD concept was approved with the roadway there, yes.
Any further questions or comments up here? If not, we'll take questions or comments from the audience or from those online.
My name's Dick Dickerson, and I live on Lakewood Hill Drive. Lakewood Hill Drive is the street that they're trying to eliminate in Track G. If I could, I'd like to there's a lot going on in this. This is not cut and dried. To drop the road in Track G, that's really a PUD modification. To add Track N, and as a future connection, that's a PUD modification. So we really ought to call this what it is, and it's not just rezoning, it's a PUD modification, and it has to meet certain standards. On the write-up, second page, second paragraph, I'm not sure where that came from, about the wrecks on Highway 6 and Campground Road. It's not on the application that I see, but that's subjective, I think. There's absolutely no proof of the wrecks there. And this body unanimously denied the PUD modification 1 year ago. I'd like to just mention a few things from that, because Harry, I think you were even online, but y'all are all new, and this has been going on for quite a while. But in the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting in October of 2022, stated that the guiding principles in the Vision 2027 established 6 fundamental designs and planning principles to guide Oxford. That's what your job is. Principle number 4 encourages a densely connected network of streets and roads that serve all users of the transportation network. So, streets are supposed to circulate. Lakewood, Oxford Commons was designed in 2005. Sisk Avenue, Lakewood Hill were the 2 primary east and west roads. It's been that until it was applied to make a change in October of last year. In the minutes, it stated that since its inception, Oxford Common PUD intended to have a robust and interconnected street network, east-west, north-south. With a few changes that have been made over the decades, the connected streets included Lakewood Hill Drive as a constant element. The recommendation by the Planning Department last year, they were not supportive of the request to modify the PUD because it will limit the intended connected street circulation for residents and other citizens. Talking about Lakewood Hill Drive. Chairman Rigby at that time stated that circulation options factor into the conversation based on how many homes are constructed and concerns with circulation on Sisk Avenue, especially since if it becomes the only east-west corridor. That's all the traffic will be there. Commissioner Riddell pointed out that there was no justification for the modification. And Attorney Millett mentioned case law, the ones that are listed on this, and mentioned that the whole point of granting PUDs in the beginning was that all the varying zones within the PUD would be laid out, everybody gets their say, down to the roads, alleyways, and generally what sort of use that will be. Mississippi says that if you modify a PUD, you should meet the same standards for modification or rezoning. Commissioner Milam stated that He still doesn't understand why there's a need to drop Lakewood Hill Drive, to cut it off. Mr. Alexander referred to a case in 2015 that the PUD would enhance the community as a whole with connectivity, and the two main connector east and west were Lakewood Hill Drive and Sisk Avenue, and it makes a lot of sense to leave the PUD the way it is. Those are the reasons that the Planning Commission voted unanimously to deny Lakewood Hill Drive being cut off. The application for zoning, growth along Campground Road, has also created the need for connectivity to Oxford, provide a convenient option for the general public, and that's all subjective. There's absolutely no proof of a need. On the statement write-up, talking about the Oxford Commons PUD clarification summary conditions, changing the density from 66 to 44 lots. But condition 23, sort of an end run to get around code section 4.4.1, which says that if a development has 80 or more homes, it shall have 2 separate emergency access roads. They platted 79 at this point. The case law is worth paying attention to, because to prove a need for a change, there must be proof that the character of the neighborhood has changed to such an extent as to justify reclassification and a public need. And that's actually Burdine versus City of Greenville, not Burden. In the case City of Biloxi versus Hilbert, it must prove by clear and convincing evidence that the character of neighborhood has changed to such an extent as to justify rezoning and that a public need exists. And I think to change the character of a neighborhood, that's based on extenuating circumstances that changes the character. It's not a self-created change. So I don't think buying contiguous property is a change in the neighborhood or the change in the character of the neighborhood. And I just stated that the change in need is there. In my opinion, I don't think it meets the criteria because nothing's been proven, nothing's been shown. Going on with the application, they did list the owners and PPIN numbers. At least 71 of these are incorrect. So there are different owners of homes, and that's just in the residential section. There are a few more things that were left out, I think, in the clarification of some of the conditions, references to certain tracts in section 8 and section 9. But the section 23, if you read that closely, it's saying that tract N cannot exceed a maximum of 79 platted lots until the connection to Campground Road is approved for construction, not constructed, but approved for construction. That violates code section 4.4.1. I don't know if y'all have seen a close-up. May I show this? Sure. This was in one of the plans when they were platting tract N. This is the new 20 acres that the developers purchased. this would be Campground Road. This is the intersection of Buddy East and Sisk. We're talking 3/4 of a mile from Campground Road over here. 61 lots, residential streets, and just a 24-foot roadway, not a normal street. I think it's something they've already started building roads over there. And by the way, they've got 3 foundations going in track in. I don't know if they're sold, that's a point of clarification. But there is construction going on over there. One more statement and I'll get out of your way. The roadways in the PUD were designed for circulation and interconnectedness. The proposed PUD plat map removes a portion of Lakewood Hill Drive and totally segregates the Oaks of Oxford Common, that track in. It's totally segregated. It'll only come out on the Sisk or Campground Road. Sisk currently has a lot of traffic congestion and an additional connector road. It will be the main east-west corridor except Highway 30 and Highway 6. I can imagine somebody that lives in the old Oaks getting on Google and saying, get directions to the Chick-fil-A on Sisk Avenue. And they're gonna go right down this road through track in. And I think that's gonna be dangerous. And I'd also like to point out that in the Vision 2037 Comprehensive Plan, on page 99, you can pull that up, it shows 2 proposed roads as east-west corridors from Campground Road. One is an extension of Deer Run North. It's already built maybe a quarter of a mile from Campground Road going west. And the developer that owns that land has already started putting in a road. But anyway, that's south of the PUD, not going through the PUD. And the other one was going to be north, going east and west from Campground over to the future Buddy East that goes up to Highway 30. Neither one was going through the PUD. So we request that Lakewood Hill remain as laid out on the current PUD, because nothing's been presented. It's sort of like, well, we're just gonna change this map, but we don't have to prove why, except maybe it's a private road, and its actuality it's a private road, and let's just change it. But that is a PUD modification, and it needs to be proven with a need and a change in the character, and I don't think they've met that convincingly, or met it at all. There's been nothing presented for that. We request that track N remain as currently laid out in the PUD, the 2019 PUD, that any changes for roadways can be done as a submittal on a request for preliminary plat approval. It doesn't need to be on a PUD plat map. In addition, the criteria for modifying the plat map was not met with proof. Simply owning contiguous property to the PUD does not change the character of the neighborhood, and there was no proof of need. We think the plan data table that reduces the density for track G from 66 to 44 should be done only with the PUD plat map redrawn, not as it is now. And we think that condition 23 be removed from the clarification summary of conditions, because it's an end run around the requirement of 2 access roads when you have 80 homes in a development. So those are my statement is an obvious objection to what is being planned here. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I've got a quick question. What do you ultimately want?
What do I ultimately want? Well, I don't think a road east-west through the middle of a residential area is appropriate. It's dangerous for adults, and there are going to be kids living on that street. 61 lots is going to pass by.
Are you talking Lakewood Hill Drive?
No, I'm talking about whatever that road, it doesn't even have a name. Campground, I mean, to Campground Road. I don't know what,
The campground connectivity road.
For Lakewood Hill Drive.
I think even though it's private now, as stated, will potentially become a public road in the future. So there should be no need to drop it off the PUD map. It'd be great if it would be connected later at some point, but I don't think you should change the roadway that's been in existence since 2005.
You want to keep what the staff recommended, which is to keep the vehicular
To keep
Okay.
Track G roadway as it is, and again, I don't think Track N needs to be changed for any reason. I mean,
And you're talking about the connectivity road to campground?
yeah,
Okay.
and it's particularly that in the clarification statement and contents, that item 23 is just, I can't believe it's in there. But those are my comments. Any?
No, it's good. I just want to make
Okay.
sure we understood. Thank you.
Thanks.
Can I respond to a few of those comments?
Sure.
So, I took some notes here while Mr. Dickerson was speaking to just try to keep this somewhat brief but sequential here. I do think there's a precedent for, and Mr. Dickerson's correct, this is a PUD amendment. It's by the staff's interpretation of the code and the law. This amendment to the PUD is a rezoning. I think there was some debate about that internally between our client, the applicant, and the city, and ultimately we agreed, okay, this is a rezoning, so that's how we're treating it. I do think there's some precedent, I can't specifically name it, but I think there's, without question, there's precedent with zoning requests that have previously been made to this entity, to the city of Oxford, using changes in infrastructure as part of the change that justifies a rezoning. I think that's definitely been a basis for these types of requests in the past, and even though this roadway is not constructed yet to Campground Road, and this creates the opportunity to do it. And if there's heartburn about this condition number 23, I mean, honestly, we were trying to acknowledge that our client, the applicant, understands that they cannot build more than 79 homes until an alternative access is provided, which they've now created the opportunity to do with the connection to Campground Road. If that needs to be reworded, we can do that. In fact, believe it or not, we were trying to be careful about that, not a runner and some sort of end game runaround. This was intentionally to be acknowledging that we understand more than 79 homes cannot be constructed until this roadway. The reason we put the wording in there about approval was granted would be so that that roadway could be bonded, as any public roadway has to be, which would guarantee the construction. If the applicant and the builder doesn't build it, the city has a bond where they can come and finish it. So for that roadway to be approved and for additional lots beyond the 79 that have been approved now, for that to all be approved, that roadway would have to be bonded. We were trying to give the opportunity so that that approval could occur without the roadway actually being complete, so that that roadway could be bonded and then constructed as part of any future lots that come along. And yes, that connection to Camp Road will potentially bring traffic through a neighborhood. Those roadways within the neighborhood are actually kind of this typical 28 feet wide city street. The extension of Buddy East Parkway that's connecting to where Sisk and Buddy East currently intersect, that roadway is being extended to the north. That's a 36-foot wide roadway. These are not the narrow streets like we are discussing in Track G, which actually is a 20-foot roadway. And lastly, I'll just say that the other change that's happened since this, we did come before the city, before the same entity here, the Planning Commission, back in October, exactly a year ago. with a similar request. Part of that request was to make this roadway in Track G private. At the time, maybe there wasn't a threshold here to show that there was some change that could justify that. Since then, additional property has been purchased by the applicant, and since then, this roadway has been approved by the Board of Aldermen as a private drive. This is not a public roadway, and our applicant does not intend to make it a public roadway. I think that's all I have for the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Any questions from the commission?
Are y'all done taking up?
Oh, yes, ma'am. No, I was just making sure there's no questions, Mr. Paul.
Oh, I appreciate it. I'm actually my name is Betsy Nelson. I actually live in Deer Run on Deer Run North. The new road is not a quarter mile. It's from the end of the road to the city line. It's a few feet long. It's in my front yard. I know this. The extension y'all are talking about, I think, along Tract N. Tonight's the first time I've seen this map, so I'm trying to get acquainted with it. The connection from Buddy East to Campground, which would be in my backyard. My husband and I can't speak for our entire neighborhood, especially along the north side of Deer Run North, where we live. We're not necessarily opposed to it. We would prefer people to take that road than come down our road, because we were formerly a dead end. But our concern is actually Campground Road. It's a narrow road north of Old Oaks. There's a lot of homes. It's narrow, it's dangerous, it's curvy, and Deer Run North specifically, we're at a blind hill. So every time we turn on and off our street, just as Campground at 6, I heard someone mention very dangerous as well. We would not be opposed to the additional road and the development of Tract N, but there needs to be traffic calming. There needs to be something done on Campground Road, because there will be induced traffic. You're gonna have Old Oaks people coming up to that road as opposed to using 6 to get access into the commons and then further into the city. We would rather them use that road than our residential road. So that's basically our concern, is our turn onto Campground Road or Deer Run North off of Campground, as well as the condition of Campground Road, the curviness, it's narrow, there's no shoulders, and there's homes pretty close to the road. It creates a dangerous condition without a lot of traffic calming opportunities. So just wanted to get that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Anybody online have any questions or comments? If there is no further questions or comments.
Mr. Murphy, if I could just reiterate, our client, the applicant, would like, or they would respectfully request that any vote on this application is voted on as the application was submitted, without any adjustments to that, specifically without removing the request to make Track G a private road, which it currently legally is.
So may I ask a question? So he's asking basically for all or nothing.
This part of the part of our request is the change in designation to that road to represent what the reality is today, which is approved private road.
Here's my question I guess I have. We've talked, Mr. Dickerson talked about it. We've all talked about connectivity and being able to get folks in and out and in and around. The lady just said, I appreciate what you said about the connectivity being good if things are taken care of the way they should be taken care of. So I like the connectivity that we're bringing to the plat or to the PUD, but I don't like the non-connectivity of what has been sold there for the last 7, 8, 9 years, and people. And here's a question that I have: is being in the real estate business, if I was buying a house there, I could see the opportunity to cut through there and go to New Albany if I wanted to, or hit Buddy East and go down to 6. I just wonder how many of those people have done the same thing. So I understand Mr. Blackburn's, wanting to make it keep it a private street. I understand that. But the way it's been sold and the way I view things is, if it has been sold as one way, that's the way it should have been maybe done in the beginning. Now, I realize things change. I understand that. Just like this new connectivity road, which makes a lot of sense to me, having more connectivity. So if you're asking us to do all or none, I think you hear where I'm coming from.
We'd like the application to be voted on as it's presented, and again, and I think you partially make the point that is our position. We would like to make sure that future home buyers, specifically in Tract N, understand that that roadway is not intended to be public. And I think it's misleading to show it on the PUD as something other than what it currently legally is, which is a private drive. We'd like the PUD to reflect the reality of what that street is.
Well, we'll entertain a motion, and whatever that motion is, that's what we'll vote on.
Just say one more thing.
Sure.
We're talking PUD modifications. It's got to be proven that there's a need. It's got to be proven a public need, and that there is a convincing evidence of a change in the character of the neighborhood. And creating your own change in a neighborhood is not changing the character. So I think case law should be involved with this in making these decisions. But and I totally disagree about item 23. There's no reason for it to be in there. Section 4.4.1 clearly states that you can't have, you've got to have 2 access roads they got to be built before you can add more homes. And just bonding a road doesn't give you another access road. So I think that should be eliminated. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any more questions or comments before we go ahead and entertain a motion? Last call. All right. At this time, if there's a motion from the Planning Commission, we entertain that.
I'd have to move that we deny the request.
As presented.
As requested.
We have a motion to deny as presented. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor of denying the request, please vote aye. Aye. Ms. Logan, do you have a vote?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and we are denying.
Aye.
Okay.
That is correct. We are denying it for it to be as it is currently written now.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay.
The ayes have it.
And so, yes,
Thank you, Ms. Logan. Okay. That concludes case number 3001. It is denied, bringing us to public hearing for case number 3005. Oxford School District request for site plan amendment for the Oxford High School, the CTE building. Go ahead when you're ready, ma'am.
Okay, so as Joseph just stated, the subject property for this case is the existing Oxford High School located off Sisk Avenue in the Oxford Commons. The request is for a site plan amendment to construct a new CTE building on the west side of Charter Loop. The request includes an additional 10 parking spaces near the main entrance, and the proposed new 2-story building has a square footage of 23,880. The proposed new building is internal to the site and doesn't front any public street. Staff reviewed our typical elements that we review for site plan. The building materials, the materials are consistent with other buildings at the site. and are all acceptable under the requirements of the Land Development Code. The proposal meets the landscaping requirements of the Land Development Code. There is signage shown on the provided elevations, which is not an included part of this site plan approval. That will have to be approved separately with a sign permit. It's a sign showing Career Tech on the front elevation of the building. Engineering reviewed the submittal with regards to traffic and access, sidewalks, water and sewer utilities, and stormwater management. Staff is recommending approval of the requested site plan with 3 conditions. I can read them into the record if you want.
No, that's fine. I was actually just reading through the engineering comments while you were reading.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the commission?
I'm going to recuse myself from voting as I am an employee of the Oxford School District. Yolanda Logan.
Thank you.
Did you hear that?
She'd like to recuse.
Oh, okay.
Is an employee of Oxford School District, she's recused herself. And I would imagine that Paul Watkins also recused himself from the conversation. He's just muted.
All right, Mr. Excellent.
He's out of there, yeah.
Okay, all right, so any questions or comments from the audience? Those joining us online? I don't have any questions or comments. If nobody has any questions or comments from those in the audience or online or the commission, we would entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion that we approve the requested site plan with the conditions noted in the application.
Okay, we have a motion to approve subject to staff conditions. We have a second. All those in favor, please vote aye. Aye. It is approved. Thank you. That brings us to public hearing for case number 3006. Mr. We've got Mr. Ben going to present for us. We have variance from section 5762 buffers and a special exception as provided in section 265 neighborhood residential structure height maximum for property located at 1016 Molly Bar.
If you give me 1 second, I'd like to share. Just like to share a quick document.
So you'll recognize this one. Seen it once or twice?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, some of you might remember this this request that's before you tonight. It's virtually the same request as what was previously presented. So the site is located on Molly Bar, it's just west. The property that's immediately adjoining the Depot Trail. And the property's about it's roughly 1.5 acres, and it was previously requested the same request of a variance from the buffer requirements and also a special exception for a 3rd-story building. The special exception for the 3rd-story building is still the same. It's just the base facts are different. And so upon the engineer receiving a survey for the property, the facts changed slightly. What was previously presented to the commission was that there was 109 feet and some change, just shy of 110 feet of frontage along Molly Bar. And so the variance request at that time, which was for a 25-foot reduction in the buffer for being adjacent to a trail, was granted. Okay, well, with this survey, what has the information provided indicates that there's 100 feet of frontage along Molly Bar. Therefore, the conditions have changed. There's a need for a new buffer variance. Instead of it being there being 25 feet of buffer, there's now I think 16, just about 16 and a half feet. They're not really proposing to construct any more in that area. That 9 feet is actually university property, which is adjacent to the buffer, and that will remain unchanged. But that's the nature of this request. So a reduction of the buffer that is typically required from 50 feet to 16 feet. So that's request A, and if you remember, the challenges associated with this property with the buffer, the buffer, and then also the setback requirement on the other side would make development on this property challenging at best. There is a hardship in that. You also notice that they were proposing 6 parking spaces that were along Molly Bar that provided access and connectivity to the trail itself. That would still be included in this. They have a connection on this site to the trail for the development. And as was previously presented and discussed, there is access from CB Webb, at least to the western property line of this site and the eastern property of CB Webb, to construct. I don't think the facts have changed from that, to construct and build and provide an easement for the housing authority to be able to have residents take advantage of that connectivity to the trail. So all those facts remain the same. So that being said, the variance staff does recommend approval with the conditions that are stated here, and the updated facts. Everything, again, is the same with the exception of the 109 feet is now 100 feet. So this would be a reduction of the buffer from 50 feet to 16 feet. And then with those changes to the site, the third story request remains the same. So the same quantity of buildings, the same quantity of bedrooms associated with it, 2-car garage on the ground floor, and then 2 floors of living above it. This will have to proceed through a site plan review process, so staff recommends approval of both of these requests, and the applicant and the development team are here should you have any questions.
Thank you, Ben. And I guess for clarification, I meant the 16 feet, that's the smallest buffer. I mean, it gradually grows, if I'm looking at this correctly.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, just the same as before, that it does widen the further south that you go.
Okay.
Another question. And also, one of the questions I think we had in a previous review was the turnaround for fire and all that at the base. We had no problems there, no changes there.
Again, that would be something that we're going to have to evaluate with the site plan review, but I believe that this was previously discussed with William Stewart and the fire department. They took a look at this. There is a hammerhead turnaround, so the fire department can pull up and they can back into that spot and turn around. But again, as site plan review, we'll have to fully, we will fully vet that again.
Any questions from the commission? Those joining us online? Any questions or comments? Any questions or
No
comments?
questions. None.
Okay, thank you.
So I have these presented in here as an A and a B. A is the variance and B would be the special exception.
Any questions or comments from the audience? That's interesting. All right. Okay, so it's broken up in an A and a B, so we'll have a motion on Part A, which is gonna be the, let's see, narrowness of the buffer. Okay, so so Part A is gonna be basically the change we're here today for, and then Part B is gonna be the same thing we approved last time, just we need to separate it, okay. Everybody clear on what we're doing? All right, if so, I will entertain a motion at this time for section or Part A.
I move that we grant the variance for section A as requested.
Does that include?
Are those, but those three conditions are basically on B, are they not?
No, there are 3 conditions with A.
Are all on A?
There are.
We treat it
Okay,
separately.
all right, yeah, with the 3 conditions. Approval of A with the 3 conditions.
Okay, we have a motion to approve section A with the staff conditions as stated herein. We do have a second. All those in favor, please vote aye. Aye. Ms. Logan?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
All right, moving on to, so Part A is approved, subject to staff conditions. That brings us to Part B, which again is a restatement of what we've previously approved, but we do need to have a motion and a vote on it today. Any questions about Part B before we do that? Everybody clear? Okay, we'll entertain a motion at this time.
Motion to approve special exception, 3 conditions listed by staff.
Okay, we have a motion to approve section B, subject to the staff conditions. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor, please vote aye. Aye. Ms. Logan?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. So Part B is also approved.
Okay.
Thank you. That moves us on to our,
Most important item of the evening, right?
that's
No,
right.
there's one more.
Well, we've got a public case number
Sorry.
3007, so don't jump the gun yet. I was gonna say, I didn't know Mr. VI Consultants was, yeah, hey, it's all right.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank y'all. All right, case number 3007, special exception as provided from section 4911A, parking requirements.
So the subject property is located in the commercial portion of the Leslie Court PUD. The commercial portion, which faces Molly Bar Road, features the Mississippi Eye Center and Oxford Dermatology Associates. Site plan review for the new surgery center on the site is currently underway. The applicant seeks a special exception to carry out a phased parking plan as a part of that development. According to the code, in the instance of a phased development, a phased parking plan may be proposed by special exception, but it does not exempt future phases of development from compliance with the parking minimum and maximum requirements. The applicant plans to build parking in areas that are a part of the current site plan and which will be a part of the parking for future expansions of the existing business on the site. While 19 spaces are required, 28 will be built at this time if this plan is approved. In total, once both buildings are built, 37 spaces will be required. The applicant states that the ability to construct the proposed spaces at this time will prevent soil disruption and disruption of traffic with future construction phases. Staff finds that this phased plan is acceptable under the requirements of the Land Development Code. When the site plan encompassing the future expansion building is reviewed and approved, we'll work with the applicant to ensure that the appropriate number of spaces are built according to the code. So staff is recommending approval of the special exception with the condition that the proposed parking of future phases will comply with the minimum and maximum parking standards of the Land Development Code.
Perfect, thank you. I personally don't have any questions. If there are any other questions from the commission, we entertain those at this time. Ms. Logan, do
No
you have any?
questions from
Go ahead.
Logan. No questions from Yolanda Logan.
Beat me to it. Thank you, ma'am. Any question? What's that?
I was about to entertain a motion.
All right, we'll have to give the audience time to, anybody in the audience have any questions or comments? Hollis, you got a question? All right. If there are no questions or comments from those online as well, any questions or comments from those online? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion at this time for case number 3007.
I'll make a motion to approve the special exception with the staff conditions.
We have a motion and a second to approve, subject to staff conditions. All those in favor, please vote aye. Aye. Ms. Logan?
Aye.
Thank you,
Aye
ma'am.
for Yolanda Logan.
Thank you very much. That concludes our planning commission meeting for today. I entertain a motion at this time to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion to adjourn, or a second? All those in favor, please vote aye. Aye. Ms. Logan?
Aye.
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 I was gonna motion, but then I.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. That concludes our meeting.
Thank you all, everybody.